For almost a year I paid for Canva without questioning it once. Everything worked, and that's what made the problem hard to see. This is what happens when your workflow becomes clearer than the tools you're using. Quick note, this video was actually recorded a few weeks ago, and since then I have changed my mind, but more on that later. I actually first started using Canva about 3 years ago, and before that, like everyone else, I was using Google Slides or Microsoft PowerPoint, but I never really liked using them because they were so limiting. So to then be introduced into Canva and see all these new features and possibilities, it was Google Slides on a whole new level. Because in Google Slides, there's no removing backgrounds, there's no corner rounding, there's no image editing, and if you want any images in your presentation, you have to Google them up, copy them, and then paste them into the actual presentation. So to discover Canva and see that all of this could be built into my presentation editor was amazing. Being able to access all the elements and objects I ever needed in a heartbeat, as well as having so many more options to editing images and editing text with no extra complexity. Not to mention the templates that actually looked good compared to the Google Presentations ones that were very simple. Canva felt like a huge upgrade I always wanted but never really found. But for the first year I was basically just making presentations every now and then, which were quite simple and could all be done in the free version of Canva. But there were of course some limitations with the premium elements, but nothing you could just find somewhere else pretty much just as easily. But I did also have to use an external background remover, which was a bit annoying but nothing crazy. But about 1 year ago, when I started this YouTube channel, I realized I needed the speed and reliability of creating good thumbnails in a single editor or app. Considering I was using Canva at the time, that became it. But I was limited by the free version. I couldn't remove backgrounds, I couldn't automatically enhance images with the lighting and effects, and there were a lot of other important features that you usually need to create really good thumbnails, like face retouch. I couldn't use either. So I decided to subscribe to Canva Pro. And that was a great decision. It sped up my workflow and it improved my thumbnails. As I bought it, I was mostly thinking I would use it for 2 or 3 specific premium features, but that I will probably find more other and different ways to utilize the subscription in the future. The subscription wasn't that expensive either, so it was worth it. I basically just wanted more one-click to fix something buttons built into my Canva editor. And I used Canva every single week after that. For thumbnails, for presentations, for graphics, for visuals. Canva was an amazing tool and was a tool I'd been searching for a long time. With every single time I did use it, I found another option that might improve my thumbnails a tiny bit more. And I paid for Canva for a full year. And this is important. For a long time there was no problem to solve. Everything worked. I wasn't questioning the subscription. But what was I actually doing in Canva? I was mostly using the same features and buttons every single time. And they were great at what they did. But were they really that advanced? There were multiple premium features I never used, like the magic eraser, the magic background, and the image generation. Week after week I basically did the same things. And the rest of the features, they just kinda sat there. The thumbnail process was almost always exact same. You import images, remove the background, use the face retouch, adjust some slider values, and then export. After almost a year, Canva started feeling more like a routine. The question kinda changed. Not, is this worth it? But more like, why am I paying for generality when my workflow isn't general anymore? Because Canva does everything, and there's definitely a benefit to that. But now I'm paying for a single focused workflow. Most online tools that are popular are general and try and do most of the things for you. Specific workflows, they optimize for specific repetition and try and do one thing really good. It's hard to have a tool that does both great. It's usually one or the other. And this is where I realized something uncomfortable. A tool can be really good and still be wrong for you. But of course it makes sense to create general tools, because it means you will have more users. Because most users are general, millions of them. You have to make a tool that works for all the different focus groups. And that means that the different use cases will compete for space. And if Canva decided to create a focused workflow to make the tool better for users like me, they will probably lose more than half of their user base, which is not really a good trade. To be able to actually see what type of specificity you need to live through the general repetition over and over again to see the actual patterns, because you can't design a workflow that you haven't lived yet. Clarity usually comes from doing the same amount of work a number of times until it starts to annoy you a little bit. When I started paying for Canva, there was a nice certainty to it, that now I have all the tools I need to create better designs and thumbnails. But after a year of a subscription, it felt more wasteful than useful, because I wasn't really using most of the features and it didn't feel that advanced or essential anymore. At this point, the problem wasn't price or features, it was fit. I just needed a thumbnail process that was as easy as possible. Import, move background, align, and then export. So once I knew the problem was fit, the next question was really simple. Do I keep paying for something I don't really need, or do I take responsibility and create a solution for my own workflow? Although building something on my own does mean a few different things. You should never build something if you don't know what the actual workflow is going to be. So I needed a clear plan for that. Or if this project becomes some sort of escape or procrastination from real work, I should treat it more like an evening project that I can work on after I've done all the hard tasks of the day. So when is paying actually smarter? If time matters more than control. If you don't have the time to build something that works for you, then it's just wasted time rebuilding the exact same thing that already exists. And if certain parts might break or require maintenance or cost even more, then it's not worth it. Or if the tool is truly a core to your workflow and income, then it doesn't make sense to go spend a month to build the same tool that might be better, or it might even be worse. Sometimes the most productive thing you can do is just outsource the problem. Just because you can build something doesn't mean you should. At a certain point it might become useful control, or you might start rebuilding problems that have already been accidentally solved. And those solutions might already be the perfect workflow solution for you. But based on what I knew now, I decided that I wanted a personalized, specific solution of Canva that works for creating thumbnails and certain editing visuals. Because of small annoyances that had built up over time, the smarter solution here was probably to build my own. I probably wouldn't have built it if I didn't use Canva just to create thumbnails, or if I was still experimenting and finding new features in Canva. I built this because the workflow was clear, and it had become more of a routine, and there was no decisions being made on how to improve my thumbnails even further in Canva. Looking back, this changed how I think about productivity. That advice usually works early, like keep going and use what works best for everyone. And as time goes on, you start to realize that you need a system. And those systems, they matter a lot more than they did at the start. You have to build one that works specifically for you. And at some point, productivity becomes less about discipline and more about design and environment. With most things, friction usually beats motivation, where if you can lower friction to do something or start something, you're basically unstoppable. Motivation is more like it comes and goes. It's a boost, but a temporary one. So if you can build a tool that reduces the friction even further, then you can make it even easier to get to work. Subscriptions can of course reduce friction too, but not as much as a personalized tool that adapts to you can. Because building your own tools shapes your environment around you to be a better fit, where you can rely less on willpower and more in a short future on defaults that make you work automatically. Sometimes a small improvement in workflow can really make a big difference. I realized this is what a builder's mindset is. And builders, they adapt. They reduce friction instead of tolerating it. I stopped asking what app should I use and started asking what do I actually do and how do I improve that process. It's about what happens when you stop guessing about what you need and start designing around what you actually do. Everything you've heard so far was recorded about 2 weeks ago. And since then, I have resubscribed, this time to Canva Business. And that might sound like a contradiction, but the reason wasn't Canva itself. It was actually the tools that were included in the Canva business plan. and that was Leonardo AI. Because during that time I was working on a game concept trailer for school. And during that phase, image and video generation mattered way more than any perfectly tailored local setup. Those are tools I can't realistically replicate locally today. So for this phase, Canva became leverage again. And that's exactly the point. The value of a tool isn't fixed, it actually changes with what you're trying to do right now.